Go
This is
ahead.
actually the next article that I actually wanted to bring up, and Sheikh Yasir, you didn't even know about this concept of companionship.
Mhm.
I'm gonna let you continue. We're getting into this about men not having friends anymore. There's a PBS video that was done, and Sajjad, you can pull it up, and I'll pull it up here too. We don't have to watch the video, but you have it on screen. You got the video on screen, but let me read for you the caption. If you can just open up the link initially, it says, "Growing number of men say they are in a friendship recession. American men are stuck in what's been dubbed a friendship recession, with 20% of single men now saying they don't have any close friends. More than half of all men report feeling unsatisfied with the size of their friend group." And it talks about how the reporter went off to Phoenix to a group of individuals to talk to them about this phenomenon that they're feeling, and how they try to connect with each other. So it's actually, the articles, to your point, like, people don't have friends anymore. They don't have suhbah, Sheikh Yasir.
Well, that there's a reason for that, and let me just wrap up the thought. Is that, and then I'll get to the reasons. The idea here is that the Prophet ﷺ also was encouraging us when he said, when the fitan of the end of time become manifest, ilzam jama'at al-muslimin.
Yeah.
Stay to the community of believers. So it's a Quranic injunction to protect yourself, and a prophetic one. So it's a reality that we cannot dismiss. And the problem is that we have been so socialized and habituated into isolation because of the nature of the modern culture that we live in, like this monoculture. It encourages loneliness.
Yeah.
It encourages isolation. You live on your own, you eat on your own, you kind of pursue your own individual dreams, you detach yourself from the burden of family and people and things like that, because you need to live your life to the fullest. And then your objective is like, I have to figure out this career and this mission of mine to become X, Y, or Z. So all of our modern culture encourages isolation, and it makes it convenient to be isolated. So now people assume it's the easier thing is to do what? To go home and get on my phone, to go home and game, to go home and Twitch, to go home and eat and drink and watch and things like that. That's where that's naturally kind of where I exist. Whereas all of our welfare, right, all of it is tied into our social connections and bonds. And by all of it, I mean our emotional welfare, our spiritual welfare, our religious welfare, our social welfare, i.e., finances, marriages, relationships. So all of our welfare is tied into our bonds and our connections. So a part of our project, and I know that this is, a lot of what you're doing, in your locale, Habibna, what I'm doing here with Prophetic Living, all of it is about cultivating real companionship, real suhbah, because, I'll be honest, unless you're a wali min awliya'illah, you will thrive in isolation. Short of that, short of being a wali min awliya'illah, we all only really thrive the extent to which we have strong bonds and connections.
Absolutely.
We have to build them. We have to build them, even if someone may say, well, I'm isolated, I'm alone, I can't leave, I can't this. Well, you have virtual spaces to cultivate some of that suhbah.
Look, Sheikh Yasir, the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alayhi never left the community. He was always with his community, and he was hurt by that community. I mean, they were learning how to deal with the Prophet ﷺ in the best form of adab. Yeah. And there are times where they weren't doing so. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reveal ayat. So, one of the things I feel that I want to address here is many people within the community, they say, well, I went to the mosque one time and I didn't like this, or someone said that to me, or someone did this. And then we use it as an excuse as to why we never reconnect with that community. Yeah. And I think that's a major problem. And I'm not discounting that things happen. No, I'm telling you, things will happen. Mm-hmm. A prophetic community is a community where there are a lot of bumps on the road. It's how we get through those bumps. And so here, for example, what we constantly talk about is going through the thick and thin of life together as a community. Mm-hmm. Meaning one day you're going to offend me, and we're going to deal with it in a very, inshallah, kind and generous way. And one day I'm going to offend you because I'm human, and we're going to deal with it with a very kind and generous way. That's suhbah. There's no, perfect companionship other than the companionship of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. And so what I fear a lot of, like when someone says they come into Maryland, they say, I want to meet you privately. I say, you know what? If you want to meet me, we have a Thursday dhikr. Come to the Thursday dhikr. Or I'll see you Friday at Jum'ah. We can talk there. And I do that very purposefully. The idea is meeting me is meeting the Jama'ah, because I can't live without the group of individuals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with in life. And last week, Shaykh Yasir, we were talking about the barakah of being together in our Thursday gathering, about where the adhan came from. Sayyidina Nabi sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi in Al-Madina al-Munawwara wanted to have a call to prayer, or some way to indicate to everyone that there was salah. Now, if he wanted to, who could have legislated that? The Prophet. But he sits with the Jama'ah. What do you think? What do you discuss? We use a bell. We use this. And then they went home. They agreed on the voice. And then they went home and Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zayd, he sees that dream in which a man teaches him the exact words of the adhan. And he comes to the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi at Fajr time, and he tells him about the dream that he saw, and the Prophet ﷺ agreed with it, and he told him, you go tell Bilal, he has a better voice than you, radiallahu an, and let him call the adhan. And then Sayyidina Umar hears the adhan, and he comes running, he says, I saw the same dream. The barakah of being in spiritual resonance together. And these were companions who, as you alluded to earlier, they had some stuff with each other, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allafa bayna qulubihim. And so if we leave the mosques, if we leave the community, we're really abandoning ourselves. And I'll just say this, Shaykh Mukhtar said this, I think in a khutbah when I was probably like 14 years old in upstate New York. And I've never forgotten it. A statement of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu arda, which translates to mean that by Allah, this is Sayyidina Umar speaking, by Allah, that which you hate about being together in a community is better for you than that which you love about being alone and in isolation. And that's, that's my take on it. You make friends.
People
You and I are friends, right, Shaykh Yasir?
We're trying. We're doing our best. Allahumma barik. Here's the thing. I think people will hear this, and I think the gut reaction that a lot of people are going to have is, well, people are not welcoming. The message is not welcoming. The community is not welcoming. And I hear this a lot. And my retort to this is the following. You and I cannot expect or assume or believe that we're entitled, that people are just going to throw themselves at us. That's an expectation that too many of us have. We assume, like, how come people don't invite me over? How come people don't welcome me? How come? And we carry this narrative that, we are just kind of oddly left out. The fact of the matter is, most relationships are generated this way. It's a two-way street, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he said that he's made you into tribes and nations, li ta'arafu. Ta'aruf in Arabic morphology is tafa'ul. Tafa'ul is when two entities are interacting. That means I pull, you push, you pull, I push, and there's a back and forth. And so there's a brother that I know who actually was a convert, and he tells the story himself about how he kind of felt really down on the community for a while. This is his personal story, and I think he's actually said this publicly. And how, no one would invite him, and he felt like he was kind of had this constant FOMO, that like everyone's having a great time and he's left out, he's not being invited, and he's not being welcomed. And then his wife, I believe, told him once, we've never actually invited anyone.
There's the reality.
And he said that actually that was the game changer in my whole social life. Like, once I was proactive about inviting people, then now he can't handle the invitations. He has to turn down invitations. Because the fact of the matter is, it's actually a simple equation. Sometimes we get stuck in the theoretical space, in the narrative. Oh, woe to me. How come people? The masjid isn't. I tell people, what is the masjid other than a configuration of people? It's like you and I. We are the masjid. The masjid is not like this. Like
That's a
the masjid is not
entity. Yeah.
the masjid is the house of
Borg.
God. It's a
That's a Borg.
structure, a space, right?
Yeah.
It's you and I who decide. And if you actually pay attention to the people who have a lot of like social viability, they're doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah, of course.
Like the people in my life that I can think of who really are like are social, but they're doing the busy work of the following: hosting people, inviting people, reaching out to people, checking up on people, asking people, gifting people, being kind and generous with people. And then guess what? We are told in our sacred tradition, جُبِلَ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى حُبِّ مَنْ أَحْسَنَ إِلَيْهِ. We are naturally disposed to love the one that is good to us. So it's a simple equation.
Yeah.
If you give, you shall receive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give and give a lot, and give from yourself and reach out. So if you and I really want community, then we have to work towards it. Then we have to host. We have to invite. We have to inconvenience ourselves. We have to reach out. We have to make ourselves vulnerable, because sometimes what deprives us is our ego. Like, how come people are not asking me how I'm doing? Well, Habibna, have I asked you how you're doing?
Yeah.
So I have to be vulnerable. I have to go out. And by the way, I have to be willing for the following. Hey, Habibna Moutasem, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, doing well.
Or maybe radio silence. Perhaps you're busy. Perhaps you're like, oh, whatever, I'll get to it, and you forget. And then you know what? I follow up a second time.
Yep.
And I follow up a third time until like, oh, sorry, I was busy, whatever. You have to also be vulnerable and ready to like make sure that you swallow your ego, because
you know what can help someone be like that, Shaykh Yasir? You know what?
Let me guess.
Wallahi. Because everything you're describing was Sayyidina Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, like checking in on people, looking after people, inviting people, making sure all are okay, and expecting nothing in return.
Yeah.
And so we want to be Muhammadan alayhi salatu in our akhlaq.
But can I just add to that? Habib?
You can add.
With the salawat, with the dala'il, read the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Read his seerah. Read his shama'il. Look at how he lived in the shama'il, the books that describe his character. And I have it right here. Like read the shama'il. Read the khasa'is. read these books. These talk about everything you need to know about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And very often we need. You know what we lack sometimes, Habibna? Not sometimes. Actually, most people. There's a book called The Influencer that I read many years ago. This book was written by a group of social scientists. They speak about influential people and people who've really like accomplished certain goals, and they were able to have profound impact and blah blah blah. In that book, I read something many years ago that was very interesting that stuck with me. Mm-hmm. He said that most people assume that they don't have enough motivation to accomplish their goals or to affect the influence that they want to affect in their lives. He said, actually, most people have sufficient motivation. What most people actually lack is know-how, is imagination, like the step-by-step. That's why in all spaces you have mentors, you have teachers for a reason, because you need someone to model, to show. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, that you have the best of examples, from the mercy of Allah is that He preserved, there's no life in human history that is as well preserved as the life of the Prophet ﷺ. We know the most intimate details of what was behind closed doors.
Yep.
In what was in the most intimate of spaces. Why? It's from the rahmah and the mercy of Allah, and from the wisdom of Allah is that He preserves so that we have a model. So if I want to model my life after someone, then I have access. That's a beautiful thing, is that I can access. Habibi, you're telling me someone who calls you and says, hey, can I come and spend time with you? Ahlan wa marhaban. But in reality, what you're really asking for is spending time with the Prophet. And Allah has been so generous that He's brought us the Prophet. We don't have to travel to find him. We don't have to we don't have to climb we don't have to go to the Himalayas and climb to the northernmost peak and find the guru sitting like flipped upside down in meditation. We don't have to do that. It's in our finger. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. And the Quran here is that مَا هُوَ مَقْرُوء. We have made it easy. And the Prophet ﷺ is the walking Quran. So we have everything at our fingertips to have someone that we can model our lives after.